When we talk about the fight against Venezuelan cartels, we're not talking about a distant conflict. We're talking about a threat that fuels violence, corruption, and instability, one that stretches far beyond Latin America's borders. Our mission is clear: disrupt, dismantle, and deny criminal networks the freedom to operate. To do that, we use every tool available: helicopters, drones, and warships. Each of these assets plays a decisive role in projecting strength and precision. Helicopters give us speed and flexibility. They allow rapid insertion, extraction, and direct strikes where terrain is unforgiving. Drones extend our reach. They see what cartels want hidden: moving shipments, concealed airstrips, armed convoys. And when surveillance shifts to action, drones provide pinpoint accuracy. Warships secure the maritime domain. They intercept traffickers at sea, cut off smuggling routes, and remind hostile networks that international waters are not safe havens. Together, this triad creates pressure that cartels cannot ignore. It's about more than firepower. It's about denying them space to maneuver, disrupting their operations, and sending a clear message: no matter where they hide, we will find them. But the challenge continues to evolve. Cartels adapt. They seek new routes, new technologies, new alliances. That's why our approach must remain dynamic, combining intelligence, partnerships, and decisive action. This isn't just about protecting borders. It's about safeguarding communities, stabilizing the region, and ensuring that criminal organizations understand one truth: if they threaten peace, they will face consequences. Thank you. The United States does not deploy helicopters, drones, and warships against Venezuelan cartels by chance. Every operation has a strategic purpose rooted in national security. Cartels are not simply drug traffickers. They are power brokers that destabilize entire nations. They corrupt governments, fund insurgent groups, and spread narcotics across borders. For the U.S., striking at these networks means more than seizing illegal shipments. It means cutting off a financial artery that fuels violence from South America to American cities. The strategic purpose is to disrupt a system that threatens stability, weakens allies, and undermines the rule of law. Venezuelan cartels operate in a unique environment. They exploit political turmoil, porous borders, and ungoverned spaces where law enforcement is weak. Left unchecked, these groups form powerful transnational organizations that rival state power. By committing to action in this space, the U.S. signals that it will not allow organized crime to expand its reach unchecked. Deploying helicopters, drones, and warships is not just about military might. It's about enforcing consequences in areas where criminals believe they can act with impunity. Strategic operations demonstrate that geography is not a shield. If cartels use the jungle, the mountains, or the sea, the U.S. has the capability to strike. The second layer of strategic purpose lies in deterrence. When helicopters hover over cartel strongholds, when drones watch every move from the sky, and when warships close sea lanes, the cartels understand the cost of defiance. These deployments are designed not only to neutralize immediate threats, but to send a message that operating in Venezuela's shadows does not protect you. Deterrence builds over time. It wears down confidence, sows mistrust among cartel ranks, and forces them into reactive rather than offensive postures. This shift is critical because a cartel that is forced into hiding is a cartel that loses initiative. Finally, the U.S. uses these operations to protect regional allies and project stability. Cartels thrive in weak states, but their influence bleeds outward, infecting neighbors with corruption and violence. Colombia, Brazil, and the Caribbean all face the ripple effects of Venezuelan drug corridors. By striking at the source, the U.S. not only defends its own borders, but also strengthens the broader security architecture of the hemisphere. The strategic purpose, therefore, is twofold: deny cartels their safe havens while simultaneously reinforcing the idea that no criminal network, no matter how entrenched, can outlast sustained international pressure. Operational success against Venezuelan cartels depends on the intelligent application of force. The U.S. does not simply unleash helicopters, drones, and warships at random. It applies them with precision, sequencing, and purpose. Each asset fills a unique role in a layered campaign that combines intelligence, surveillance, and rapid strike capability. These operations are not about overwhelming numbers, but about speed, accuracy, and adaptability in environments where cartels believe terrain or distance gives them an advantage. By integrating these platforms, the U.S. builds a system of constant pressure designed to deny cartels freedom of movement. Helicopters remain one of the most versatile tools in this campaign. In the dense jungles and rugged mountains of Venezuela, mobility is limited and ground forces alone cannot cover vast territory. Quick rotary-wing aircraft close this gap. They insert special operations teams into hostile zones, provide close air support in firefights, and extract personnel before cartels can counterattack. Helicopters are also highly psychological. When cartel members hear the thunder of rotors, they know their safe haven has been compromised. The ability to appear suddenly, strike decisively, and disappear before reinforcements arrive makes helicopters indispensable in operations where speed determines success. Drones expand the operational picture far beyond the human eye. Armed and unarmed unmanned aerial vehicles conduct round-the-clock surveillance, identifying hidden jungle airstrips, tracking smuggling convoys, and mapping cartel strongholds. Unlike helicopters, drones do not tire and they operate undetected at altitudes that cartels cannot counter. This persistence creates a constant sense of vulnerability for traffickers who rely on secrecy and terrain advantage. When required, drones shift from observation to precision strikes, destroying vehicles, disabling infrastructure, and neutralizing high value targets without exposing U.S. personnel to direct risk. In modern counter-cartel operations, drones are the watchful eyes and the sharp edge of American power. Warships secure the maritime domain, which cartels depend on for large-scale smuggling. Cocaine and weapons do not only move through land corridors, they flow through the Caribbean, hidden in fishing boats, cargo containers, and semi-submersible vessels. U.S. naval presence intercepts these shipments before they reach international markets. By deploying destroyers, cutters, and amphibious ships, the U.S. denies traffickers safe passage, conducts interdictions at sea, and provides staging platforms for helicopter and drone operations. A cartel that loses control of the sea loses its most profitable artery, and that is why warships are critical in the broader operational framework. But tactics are not applied in isolation. Helicopters, drones, and warships are most effective when used together in joint, synchronized operations. A drone may identify a jungle convoy, a warship may cut off the maritime escape route, and helicopters may deliver forces to capture cartel leadership before they scatter. This layered approach creates what military planners call a kill box, an area where every route of escape is monitored and every movement is vulnerable to rapid strike. By closing off these avenues simultaneously, U.S. forces deny cartels the ability to maneuver or regroup. Coordination across domains, air, land, and sea is what transforms isolated assets into a decisive campaign. Another key element of operational tactics is intelligence fusion. Cartels are adaptive. They shift routes, hide among civilian populations, and use coded communications to mask their movements. To stay ahead, U.S. forces integrate satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and human sources with real-time drone feeds. This fusion ensures that every helicopter sortie, every drone mission, and every warship deployment is guided by precise intelligence rather than guesswork. The result is efficiency, fewer wasted missions, greater impact per strike, and a sustained sense of pressure on cartel operations. Without intelligence integration, even the most advanced platforms would risk being reactive. With it, they are proactive and surgical. Finally, operational tactics emphasize sustainability. The U.S. does not aim for a single strike that cartels can recover from. It aims for a continuous campaign that exhausts them. Helicopters rotate between bases to maintain constant mobility. Drones overlap coverage zones so cartels never feel unseen. Warships cycle through patrol routes to keep maritime choke points under watch. This sustainability ensures that the pressure is relentless. Cartels thrive when they sense weakness or gaps in enforcement. They collapse when they face constant, coordinated, and unyielding disruption. Sustained tactics are the difference between a symbolic strike and a campaign that dismantles criminal networks piece by piece. The fight against Venezuelan cartels is not confined to Venezuela itself. It reverberates across the entire Western Hemisphere. Cartels function as destabilizing forces that erode national security, weaken democratic institutions, and exploit vulnerable populations. Their reach spreads into Colombia, Brazil, the Caribbean, and beyond. When the U.S. deploys helicopters, drones, and warships to counter these groups, the impact is felt across borders. It is not only about hitting traffickers, it is about stabilizing a region where criminal power threatens to overshadow legitimate governance. One of the most immediate impacts lies in the protection of neighboring countries. Venezuela's porous borders allow cartels to smuggle narcotics into Colombia and Brazil, fueling violence and corruption in those nations. The presence of U.S. military assets forces these networks to recalculate their movements, reducing the flow of drugs across borders and giving regional governments room to strengthen their own law enforcement. In this sense, U.S. operations create breathing space for allies who otherwise find themselves overwhelmed by cartel firepower and intimidation. At sea, the regional impact is just as significant. The Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico are critical corridors for trafficking, and when warships interdict smuggling vessels, they prevent cocaine, heroin, and synthetic drugs from reaching Central America, Mexico, and ultimately U.S. cities. These maritime strikes disrupt not only the flow of narcotics, but also the financing that sustains cartel expansion. Every intercepted shipment represents millions of dollars denied to criminal organizations, money that would otherwise fund weapons, mercenaries, and corrupt politicians. The U.S. presence also reassures allies. Countries such as Colombia and Trinidad and Tobago rely on U.S. cooperation to confront threats too large for them to face alone. By demonstrating the ability to project power through helicopters, drones, and naval forces, the U.S. signals commitment to regional security partnerships. This reassurance strengthens diplomatic ties, encourages intelligence sharing, and fosters greater joint training exercises. A strong alliance network is as critical as any single strike against a cartel stronghold. There is also a deterrence effect at the regional level. Cartels thrive when they believe external powers lack the will to act. By maintaining an active posture in Venezuelan airspace, waters, In border regions, the U.S. disrupts the perception. Drones circling above, helicopters flying into cartel territory, and warships patrolling the Caribbean communicate one message: transnational crime will be met with sustained pressure. This deterrence ripples outward, discouraging emerging groups from expanding operations and reminding established cartels that their power is neither permanent nor unchallenged. Regional stability is not only about security, it is also about governance. Cartels thrive where institutions are weak, where corruption corrodes courts and police, and where economic desperation drives recruits into criminal ranks. By striking cartels at scale, the U.S. indirectly strengthens governance by reducing the influence of criminal money in politics. A mayor who does not fear cartel assassins, a police unit not bribed by drug lords, and a judge not bought with drug profits, all of these strengthen the rule of law. This is the deeper, often overlooked regional impact. Military operations buy time and space for democratic governance to reassert itself. Economic stability is another dimension. Cartels distort markets by introducing illicit wealth, intimidating businesses, and diverting state resources toward endless security battles. When U.S. forces choke trafficking routes, they disrupt the cash flow that cartels use to dominate local economies. Over time, this reduces the ability of criminal groups to outspend governments in poor regions. For local populations, fewer cartel resources mean less forced recruitment, fewer violent takeovers of businesses, and more opportunity for legitimate economic activity to thrive. The humanitarian impact is equally significant. Cartel violence displaces communities, creates refugee flows, and destabilizes border areas. Families are forced to flee when criminal battles erupt, and entire regions fall into lawlessness. By targeting the networks that fuel this violence, U.S. operations help reduce displacement pressures. Warships at sea also play a humanitarian role, intercepting vessels that may contain not only contraband but also trafficked individuals. Every interdiction that weakens a cartel indirectly protects vulnerable populations from being exploited as pawns in criminal warfare. Another critical aspect of regional security impact is counterterrorism. Cartels and extremist groups often intersect, trading weapons, training, and logistical support. In Venezuela's chaotic environment, these links cannot be ignored. By striking cartels, the U.S. cuts off pathways that could otherwise allow terrorist networks to expand their reach into the Americas. This layered approach to security ensures that transnational criminal organizations do not evolve into hybrid threats capable of merging drug trafficking with ideological violence. The credibility of U.S. global leadership is also reinforced through regional impact. Allies beyond Latin America watch closely to see whether the U.S. has the will to confront criminal empires near its own borders. Demonstrating decisive action in Venezuela strengthens American standing worldwide, proving that the U.S. is prepared to defend order not only in distant theaters, but also within its own hemisphere. Credibility is currency in international relations, and sustained pressure against Venezuelan cartels increases America's influence in both regional and global security dialogues. Ultimately, the regional security impact of U.S. operations is about shaping an environment where law, stability, and order have space to grow. Helicopters, drones, and warships may be tactical tools, but their effect reaches far beyond the battlefield. They disrupt economies of crime, weaken corruption, protect borders, reassure allies, and deter future threats. The message is clear. When cartels attempt to destabilize nations, the U.S. response is not isolated. It is regional, strategic, and unrelenting. The fight against Venezuelan cartels is not static. These criminal organizations evolve rapidly, testing new tactics, technologies, and alliances. For the United States, the greatest challenge is not a single battle, but the constant adaptation required to stay ahead of adversaries who learn from every strike. Future operations must anticipate this evolution and prepare for a battlefield where cartels act less like gangs and more like hybrid military forces. One of the first challenges is technological adaptation. Cartels increasingly use drones of their own, not just for smuggling, but also for surveillance and attacks. Commercial drones have been weaponized with grenades and explosives in other conflict zones, and Venezuelan cartels are beginning to experiment with similar tactics. This development demands that U.S. forces refine counter-drone strategies, integrating electronic warfare systems, jamming capabilities, and rapid interception tools. The skies, once an uncontested domain for U.S. assets, are becoming a contested arena. Another challenge lies in cyber operations. Cartels are learning to protect their communications using encrypted messaging platforms, cryptocurrency transactions, and dark web networks. They adapt faster than governments because they are unburdened by bureaucracy. To counter this, the U.S. must expand its use of cyber intelligence, penetrating encrypted networks, tracking digital finance, and targeting online infrastructure that supports cartel logistics. The digital battlefield is just as critical as the jungles and oceans. Geography also remains a perpetual challenge. Venezuela's terrain favors guerrilla-style operation. Jungles conceal airstrips, rivers serve as hidden highways, and borderlands blur the line between safe havens and battle zones. Cartels know the terrain intimately and exploit it to their advantage. U.S. forces must adapt by developing new mobility tactics, leveraging rotary wing aircraft, and using unmanned systems that can operate in dense, high-risk environments without exposing ground forces to ambushes. Terrain cannot be changed, but tactics can. Cartels also adapt by diversifying their revenue streams. Beyond drugs, they traffic gold, oil, weapons, and even people. Each illicit trade finances the next, creating resilience against U.S. pressure. Future operations must expand beyond a narrow focus on narcotics and target the broader financial ecosystem of cartel. Warships must be ready to interdict smuggled gold shipments. Drones must monitor illegal mining operations. Helicopters must be deployed not only for raids, but also for disrupting supply chains that cartels rely on. Political instability in Venezuela compounds the challenge. A government compromised by corruption provides sanctuary to criminal actors. In some cases, state officials collaborate directly with cartels, offering protection in exchange for profit. This blurs the line between criminal and political power, making it difficult to strike cartels without destabilizing already fragile governance. The U.S. must adapt by using a combination of military pressure and diplomatic engagement, ensuring that strikes against cartels do not inadvertently strengthen authoritarian actors. International complicity is another dimension. Cartels do not operate in isolation. They build transnational alliances with other criminal groups in Mexico, Central America, and even Europe and Asia. Cocaine leaving Venezuela often arrives in West Africa before crossing into Europe, creating a global web of criminal commerce. Future adaptation requires stronger international cooperation, intelligence sharing agreements, and joint operations. The challenge is not only Venezuelan cartels, but the networks they empower worldwide. Resource allocation is a persistent obstacle. The U.S. military must balance counter-cartel operations with commitments in Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. Limited assets cannot be everywhere at once, and cartels exploit gaps in coverage. This forces U.S. commanders to prioritize efficiency, deploying drones where manned aircraft are not sustainable, using warships as mobile command posts, and relying on intelligence-driven precision rather than sheer presence. Future adaptation depends on making every asset count. Cartels are also skilled at exploiting populations. They recruit the poor, intimidate the weak, and use civilians as shields. When helicopters or drones strike, cartels are quick to spread propaganda that paints the U.S. as aggressors. Winning the battle of perception is as important as winning the battle of firepower. Future operations must therefore integrate information campaigns, ensuring that local communities understand the cartels are the threat, not the counter-cartel forces. Without winning hearts and minds, victories risk being temporary. Another emerging challenge is the use of semi-submersible and fully submersible vessels by cartels. These narco subs evade radar and sonar, slipping past maritime patrols. While warships and aircraft have intercepted some, many still reach their destinations. Adapting to this threat requires advanced detection systems, closer coordination with coast guards of regional allies, and new naval tactics that anticipate cartel innovation at sea. If ignored, these vessels could become the dominant trafficking method of the future. Intelligence gaps remain a constant risk. Despite technological superiority, no operation succeeds without acumen intelligence. Cartels are ruthless in silencing informants, making it dangerous for civilians to cooperate with authorities. Building trust within local communities and protecting sources is essential for sustained operations. Future adaptation requires combining signals intelligence with human intelligence, ensuring a comprehensive picture that prevents cartels from exploiting blind spots. Corruption is another enduring challenge. Cartels buy loyalty from police, judges, and military officials in the region. Every operation risks compromise if insiders leak intelligence. To adapt, the U.S. must work selectively with vetted partners, providing training and oversight while minimizing exposure to corrupted channels. Building resilient partnerships takes time, but it is critical to sustaining pressure on criminal networks. Cartels also manipulate migration routes. Smugglers piggyback on the movement of displaced people, blending into refugee flows. This creates a humanitarian and security challenge, as distinguishing traffickers from innocent families is complex. The U.S. must adapt by integrating humanitarian missions with security operations, ensuring that border enforcement does not neglect the protection of vulnerable populations. A failure to balance both creates resentment that cartels are quick to exploit. Future adaptation also requires preparing for cartel militarization. Some cartels already field armored vehicles, heavy weapons, and disciplined paramilitary wings. In Venezuela's unstable climate, this trend could accelerate, creating forces that resemble insurgent armies more than criminal gangs. To counter this, U.S. forces must be prepared for asymmetric warfare, small unit tactics, night operations, and strikes that neutralize heavily armed groups before they can consolidate power. Another obstacle is endurance. The longer the campaign continues, the greater the strain on U.S. forces, budgets, and political will. Cartels exploit time, betting that governments will lose focus while they remain patient. Adaptation means building strategies that outlast cartel resilience, rotating forces, maintaining long-term surveillance networks, and creating multilateral coalitions that share the burden. Endurance is not only about firepower, but also about sustaining momentum across years, not months. The information environment will also play a defining role. Cartels spread disinformation, flood social media with propaganda, and attempt to undermine U.S. credibility. Future adaptation requires countering these narratives with facts, transparency, and regional partnerships that highlight the true cost of cartel violence. If the public perceives counter cartel operations as unjust, support wanes. If the public understands the stakes, resolve strengthens. Ultimately, the greatest challenge is unpredictability. Cartels are not bound by treaties, rules, or bureaucratic delays. They experiment, fail, adapt, and try again at a pace that tests conventional forces. The U.S. must therefore cultivate agility using modular forces, advanced technology, and flexible strategies that adjust in real time. Helicopters, drones, and warships will remain essential, but their use must evolve continuously to meet shifting threats. Adaptation is not optional. It is the only path to victory in a fight where the enemy never stops changing.